James, thanks for joining a conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, man. So this is just a casual one. We're shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
If something comes up that's interesting, we'll explore that avenue. You were talking about spontaneously breaking into song, so
yeah,
whenever you want to, man. Whenever you want to.
Perfect. Yeah, my singing voice isn't the best, but I'll give it a go at times. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
So I suppose one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you was, number one, like when we met last week at James's the Foot Collective get to play together, like just playing with hacky sacks and slack lines and stuff. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And particularly when we got onto the topic of running, which is something I've started picking up this year. It's something I'm really getting into, working my way up to doing my first marathon. And you're like, yeah, I just did 50Ks the other weekend.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get like, well, you're first of all, you're a big dude, man. How much do you weigh? Like 100 and...
Yeah, so 110 kilos on a heavy day, 108 on a light day, but generally around about 110.
Yeah, and so I don't think that I've even heard of many people running around at that weight. When did you first get into running? Is this something you've been doing a long time or something recent?
So I guess the progression from where I started to then now was in the gym for quite a few years, and then actually got into triathlons first. So I had a bet with my brother who wanted to quit smoking, and then I had never done triathlon, so I thought, why don't we both try and he'll quit smoking, we'll do it together. The progression of that led to then a half Ironman, and then sort of the development of running through that process, and then basically just sort of falling into it along that, I guess, path. So started in... what would have been maybe 2017. I only really got super into it probably last year, and basically just been running around since. So,
Nice.
I mean, obviously being big, I sort of have to take it slow, but it's just good fun, and it's anyone can do it. I think that's why I like it. So
Yeah. So you, like, how did you get big in the first place? You were playing lots of rugby, or
So I started at school playing a bit of footy. Finished school, and I actually went through puberty quite late. So I got to 16, was actually quite small. But then once I got to 19 years old, basically just went over 100 kilos. And I've sat there since. My weight kind of fluctuates, sort of goes up and down depending on what I do. But basically been 100 kilos since 19, and even with running, I found sort of when I first started, even doing sort of 3-4Ks was quite challenging. But then as my sort of strength developed over time, slowly get better and sort of more efficient with it. And as I said a while ago, the mindset side of things, I think being big, it's not so much about how quickly you finish it as much as it's just a case of keep going and actually finish it. So I think that's why I like it. I'm definitely not Usain Bolt, but I don't know. Slow and steady is the name of the game. And I think, it's just a case of right foot, left foot. And although I'm heavy, just got to keep on going. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I imagine you're speaking with other people at these events, the triathlons and things like that. So obviously it would feel different for you just having an extra 30 kilos than most people. Does that affect the mindset, or do you find that your mindset is similar to theirs in certain ways?
I think so. I think there's, in every person who likes to do long endurance sort of stuff, there's a desire to want to try and find the limit. I think the heavier you are, maybe the limit comes on a little bit quicker. But again, it sort of comes into two categories. I think you sort of, I guess you can either compete in something or complete something. And depending on the distance and I guess the speed at which you're running at, there's sort of two avenues you can approach it from. On the completion side of things, definitely plays a toll. And I think people are always sort of commenting on the fact. But at the end of the day, you're going to get to a point where your body's going to fatigue. Mentally, you're going to struggle, whether that's at 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K. It sort of just varies, and it's different from person to person. But I guess then how you manage that once you get to that point is then the process, obviously. So I wouldn't say so much as it's a hindrance, because everyone hits that point at some stage. You could be 60 kilos and get to 10K and be like, whoop, blowing up. Just like I could get to 20K at my weight and be like, oh, I'm blowing up. So it's sort of, it depends on fitness and everything, but it definitely makes it harder. But I think relative to size, it's sort of scalable to a degree. So,
And when you're talking about hitting that point, are you referring to the wall there, or potentially other little niggling? So you have like a little niggling injury, and maybe you think, my prep's real good. I'm feeling really good this day. I'm going to go for this time. And you hit 10Ks and you realize, oh shit, I'm 5 minutes behind where I thought I I was going to be, and my leg's hurting, and I've got an extra 40 Ks to go. I'm guessing you'd need sort of different mindsets between those different things.
Yeah, I think you do. And I think it's important. I guess how I approach it is, again, it's different when you're racing something. Like if you're really strict on, okay, I want to hit 5-minute Ks for this distance, and you're not hitting that, then I think the effect of that psychologically can have sort of a negative consequence. But the idea of doing something like, let's say, like a negative split where, let's say you're running 20K, you start 10K and you do it in, I guess just to simplify it, I'll say 20K. If it takes you simply an hour, if you did the first half in 35 minutes and then you do the second half in, let's say, 30 minutes, so to have that negative split is better in that you can carry the confidence forward. But to start out too quickly and to sort of run, I feel like I've rambled on that a little bit.
No.
Can we come back to that question again? Because I'll have a better answer. So can you ask the question again?
Yeah. Okay. I do want to get onto what you're just talking about, negative splits, though, because that's probably something I haven't really talked about. But I suppose you're referring to just before of, okay, people will come into a race or something, and then you're probably going to face a challenge or a mental block of some sort. Now, I sort of, in my mind, split it up to two things. One, which is like the wall, which I've heard a lot about. I've never actually experienced it myself. But I haven't run more than 10Ks. So, and then I guess the other, which would be that would be a more in the completion side of things, just trying to complete it, and you're coming against this exhaustion barrier. And then there'd be the other, which I would see as more as the competition side of challenge, which is you've set yourself a goal of, I want to do a marathon in less than 4 hours, and you get 10Ks in, and then just for whatever reason, your body that day is failing you. Like it's not where you want it to be. How would you feel? Have you experienced those two different types of challenge? And if so, like what's the mindset you have to try and use to get around those challenges?
I guess, yeah. So I understand a little better. So, I mean, injuries is one thing. I think, you can have the best lead in you could ever possibly have, and still on a day, something can go wrong. You can tweak something, you can sort of damage something. I think in terms of that, not to ever say the race is never over. I think you have to be okay to be flexible with a goal. If you're setting a time to try and win that race, but let's say you get halfway through and you do get an injury, you have to be okay to kind of slow yourself down and go, I'm just going to get to the finish line. Thankfully, in my own experience, I haven't sort of had that too much. The instances I have had have been where basically to the point where it hasn't been enough of a niggle, or it's been so much of a niggle. So, for example, when I did a half Ironman, I got off the bike, and when I first started running, both quads started to cramp up almost completely, to the point where I was actually up against a fence, sort of like straddling it to try and get my legs to relax. And in that context, it was such a issue that I wasn't actually able to run the pace that I was ever going to run. So in that moment, it was a case of, okay, I just have to try and keep going here. I'm not going to be able to hit the time that I wanted to hit. That's okay. The goal now is to sort of just keep moving. And for the first probably 500 to 600 meters, it was a hobble. And then after 600, it turned into like sort of a bit of a slower walk. And then slowly over time, I got a little bit faster. Finished that run still super cramped up. But it wasn't so much, I guess in that context, I just had to go, that's okay. I just need to slow it down and sort of keep working through it. And admittedly, it can be frustrating if you've trained and you're setting a target and you've set a goal, but sometimes stuff like that happens. And if you can sort of almost sidestep it to a degree and go, this is still going to be a challenge, I can still finish this, you're still going to get the reward of completing it. And admittedly, it can be frustrating and upsetting to not hit the target that you've hit. But at the end of the day, you finish the race, you go through that challenge, then there's always going to be another one you can do. And it's just the nature of, I guess, long distance especially. You could have the best training, the best nutrition, the best hydration, but then something just could be off. Your body just might not be feeling it, and then it becomes harder than you anticipate. So thankfully, again, in terms of, I guess, really trying to push the upper limit of speed, I don't have the most experience to be able to comment on that side of things. Yeah. But I guess how I personally approach it is more of a case of finding where your limit is, propelling yourself past that to a degree, and then just managing that as best you can. Now, I think if I was to try and do a max effort and really sprint and go for it, the pace might be able to quicken, but then at the same time, I would guess I would attribute it to almost a degree of, what would be the words for it? Not softness, but rather being okay to go a little bit slower. So again, this sort of ties into, I guess, my size and how I personally have to approach it. But it's always a case of sort of maintaining the effort and keeping it conserved to a degree so that even if worst case scenario something does go wrong, I can still slow it down and just have the goal of completing it be the end sort of task. If that makes,
Yeah. Have you ever practiced, I guess, that mindset switch? So just for me personally, I really struggle with if I have a certain goal on a day and then something goes wrong. So just the other week, I was trying to do 5K in 25 minutes and I think I did the first 3K around like that 15-minute pace, so I was pretty much bang on. And then my phone, which I sort of carry with me, which has my the app which measures like how far and what pace I'm going, just cut out for whatever reason and stopped the run.
Yeah.
And from that point, my mindset didn't switch to, all right, good, I'll keep going and I'll still try and run really hard. My mindset just went like, what's the point? I don't know. I can't measure it. And so then the rest of the run was really crap. I definitely identify that as something I need to work on. And I guess, like, have you ever had that similar experience? And can you practice? Is there a way of practicing switching your mindset so you can just go, oh, okay, this has happened, there's a setback. I can still I'm not going to be able to achieve that top goal, but I can still achieve this secondary goal.
I think so. I mean, I guess in the instance of something like that happening and not knowing sort of the pace that you're running, there's sort of two parts to it. One, I guess the idea of sort of going, accepting it for what it is, going, I'm going to still try and dial my effort up and push through. But then on the second hand, you could finish that run, look back at it and go, hey, that first 3K, I was there. And I think the important part about it is in the instance of it happening can be quite frustrating. And I think perhaps at the start, it's more a case of looking at the positive side of things after the fact, because then by looking at the positive side of things after the fact, you develop the association of, hey, even though I didn't finish, I still smashed out that 3K. And I guess the continuation of that momentum into your next run, you're carrying the fact, okay, I smashed 3K out really, really well. That means on the next run, I'm going to be able to hit that 3K because I know I've already done it. And I'm going to be able to sort of continue past. So I guess perhaps in the first instance when it happens, it can be quite hard because if you haven't, I guess, practiced the ability to have that setback and go, okay, no, I sort of need to switch myself back on. But then I guess, again, personally, it's using sort of or looking at previous runs in a positive sort of light and then drawing on that sort of momentum of sorts to then try and will yourself through. Again, I think so.
No, I think that's good, man. That's almost like looking at it in the overall picture, which is, do you want to come out of this run feeling negative and then the next time you're even thinking about running, it's like, oh man, that last run was so shit. Versus thinking of it as the positive, which is that was it sort of sucked a little bit, but man, that 3K, awesome.
And I think it's all about positive association to the thing, because I think the more you're sort of associated within the experience in a positive sort of attitude, the more you can kind of find that when something goes wrong. So, like, I mean, let's say if I did 10 runs and 7 of those runs I finished really, really well. But I have 3 runs that, as you say, you get to 3K, something goes wrong, you get an injury, or your phone goes, or your shoes come undone, and you have to stop. Out of that sort of 10 lot, 7 of the times I've had a positive sort of experience, and then in those 3 times it's been sort of more of a negative experience. The next time something happens, you can kind of draw on that experience to go, okay, that's all good. This is a bit of an instance where something bad's happened. Just shoe up, phone on, whatever it is, and continue through, because you know that more commonly it's a positive outcome. Just on particular days you may have that negative sort of instance. And I think it's the same thing with racing as well. Some races you could have would be absolutely fantastic, you nail it from the get-go. You could get halfway through one race, bonk, and it's just shit. But if you sort of, the more commonly you find yourself in the positive sort of association, when something like that happens, you can go, oh no, it's all good, that's okay, just keep the wheels churning, because even if this one isn't where I want it to be, the next one will be. So it's that, I think it's more about drawing on experience rather than sort of in a particular instance going, this is how I'm going to overcome this particular thing. It's sort of drawing on that past sort of understanding of what the positive sort of side of things.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned negative splits just before as well, and so this is, or I suppose, taking it a little bit easier at the start to then be able to push it harder, maybe towards more the middle bit. Is that how you personally would like attack a race in general?
I think so. Again, we have to be careful to sort of differentiate between a shorter sort of distance and then longer, because I think on a shorter scale of things, relative to sort of, I guess, time that you're going to be running, the shorter the effort, you can kind of just go out and give it a strong blast, like let's say up to 30 minutes or so. Even still, I guess when you're first starting out, to try and start to have that negative split, it can kind of have the effect of it is like a positive sort of momentum in that you see yourself getting faster and you're like, well, I've been running for longer, I should be fatiguing. Why is that not the case? And you sort of can ride that, I guess I don't want to keep using the word momentum. You can ride that sort of wave to then get yourself to the end. So I guess with that 53K or the 53K that I did, my whole thinking was slow and steady from the start, get to halfway. Once I'm at halfway, then I can start to sort of see where I'm at, build my pace and sort of build that intensity. Obviously scaling that back down to a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, I think it's more about sort of saving yourself so that you can finish strong, because finishing a run confidently is so much better than sort of milking yourself to the end. Because if you've run 20K and you finish going, oh, I feel pretty good now, like that was a good run, versus 20K going, oh my God, I'm absolutely like shot, that was rough, that was brutal. Again, the association at the completion of that, you're going to have either more of a positive or sort of negative association. So I think a negative split allows you to sort of carry that positive thought at the end of the run onto then your next one. And obviously there's a lot of sports science stuff behind the run, the I guess the logic behind a negative split. But in terms of, I think, the confidence that it can develop or foster, a negative split is like, paramount. So. Yeah.
So just to make sure, a negative split would be, say, I run the first K in 6 minutes, and then the second K in 5 minutes 30.
Yeah.
Third K, 5 minutes, and it sort of goes down to a point. I guess you're not just going to keep going down until you
1 minute 30.
Exactly.
Woo, Again, Usain Bolt.
Okay, because well, my strategy. So I'll just go through my strategy at the moment, which is I've been thinking a lot more of the. Have you heard of the run walk method? Which is
no. Enlighten me. What is it?
Yeah, so it's essentially where you run, I guess, harder, and then you'll walk for a certain period. So I've heard things being said like you run for a minute and a half and then walk 30 seconds, and then you just keep repeating that sort of ad nauseum, which is I've heard is more of a beginner's tactic to because that constant jogging, that constant going can be a little bit psychologically
taxing.
Taxing for sure. Whereas if it's like, okay, I'm going to run a minute and a half, and then it's like I've got a reward built into it. Just for me, I've noticed, I suppose, like I used to play soccer a lot as a kid, and I think sort of like my natural thing to do, because I used to play on the wings, so I would run, sprint up and down, and then I would just have minutes at a time where I'd sort of just be walking, doing nothing. So it sort of feels really natural to me. So have you ever actually seen people doing that in any of these runs or in the Ironmans or anything like that?
Definitely. It's all comes down to, I guess, the category, I guess, how quickly you want to finish something. I think whatever you need to do to make it easier and more perceivable. I mean, to run 40K is a long distance. You run 1K and it's like you got to do another 41 of those. Like it isn't a walk in the park. Like, it's a long effort. And I think if there's a way you can sort of make it easier and make the perception of that challenge be smaller, I mean, to run for a minute and a half is a lot easier than running consistently for 4 hours. So I think whatever you need to do to get yourself to the finish line, whether it be doing it like that or running for 5 minutes, walking for 30, or however you split that up, if that works well, then by all means. I mean, when I did the 50K, it was literally a case of walk the hills, run the downs, run the flats. Get to a hill, just cruise up, no need to rush, run the downs, run the flats. And for me, it was a way of sort of going, okay, just get to the top. That's the top, that chunk done. Then, all right, next bit, let's jog, let's run. So yeah, if you can find a way to make it perceivably smaller and more manageable, then I think that's a fantastic way to do it. Again, it's the notion of trying to run consistently for 4 hours it's hard. Like, there's no two ways about it. It's not an easy thing to do. So yeah, if that works for you, then I think that's more than an effective strategy to sort of approach it with.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, because it's I definitely feel the taxiness of even just 5Ks at a steady pace. I just notice it's probably because I haven't really attempted doing it as you were saying with a negative split either, which is my natural tendency is just like go hard, do the hardest stuff at the start, and then it's just gonna go sort of downhill from there.
Peak, and then it's like woo. One thing you could look into as well is which for the longest time is you got to run slow to run fast. And I was always of the mind of like, if I'm trying to run quickly, why shouldn't I be running fast? You know, I need to get pace on legs. I want to be running 5 minutes. My running improved the day I started running slowly, because by running slowly for consistent time, you develop your aerobic capacity to sort of manage at a better level. You become more efficient. Your heart rate stays lower. How much energy you sort of consume and need to actually run at that pace reduces, so you become more efficient. So a combination of, I guess, if you can start sort of doing that sort of stuff as well is really good. And then it can be a little bit counterintuitive, because if you're literally running, having a conversation like we are, it feels like you're not actually doing anything. But the effect of that is quite mind-blowing, really. And once you start doing it for a while, then it makes running so much easier as well. So, but yeah, negative splits is definitely a good approach to it, as is the sort of walk-run. It's just really a combination of whatever you need to do to develop the confidence, or that positive confidence of that you can get to the end, and however you break that down into chunks or whatever it is the best way to do it. So
nice.
Yeah.
You are taking a completely different turn as well. You mentioned Jordan Peterson just before, and I was just intrigued. When and where did you first hear of him? And I guess it's funny. He seems to have had a really big impact on a lot of people, but in different ways as well. So it's because he covers such a huge variety of psychological topics. For some people, it would be getting over an addiction. For others, it would be not achieving what you want to achieve in life, or just feeling like you're too taxed out, or you're too, I don't know, working yourself too hard. So what problem did he solve for you, or enlighten you on?
I think it was, I don't know, like so much of it, one of the most prominent things I remember was the idea of like the lobster and the hierarchy, and that sort of, I guess, the elements within that. And I think that probably stuck with me the most, just in terms of, I guess, how I perceive myself and where I sort of drew my boundaries, and I guess what I perceive my limits are, I guess, against my peers. And although it was only a very sort of short insight into the book, it sort of prompted me to sort of ask questions to sort of understand myself a little bit better. And then I think that was sort of happened to coincide with, I guess, the pursuit of sort of triathlons and things like that. So I guess, in terms of how I perceive myself with regard to my own capacity, it made me question that, to then try and find ways to sort of better myself, if that makes sense. As I was saying, I think when I first started reading it, I would like to sort of return back to the book, because I feel as though my interpretation of it prior, so I think, when did I read it? I think it would have been maybe 3 years ago. Oh no, sorry, at the start of, however long ago I read it, I would like to return back to it now, because I feel as though in the last probably 6 to 7 months, my own understanding of myself psychologically and how I perceive myself has changed. So I feel as though I would probably have a different takeaway from the book. I mean, perfectly honest, I think I didn't understand psychology enough to truly have, I guess, a really profound sort of lesson come from the book. But I would like to sort of return back to it to, I guess, read it again and sort of see if it really prompts, I guess, further things that it sort of started with. But I just felt as though my understanding wasn't enough to truly grasp the sort of the deeper concepts of the novel, or sorry, not the novel, but of the book. But,
there's certain topics like that which really you feel like there's something in it, but you just can't really get it. I've had that with Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which is sort of a book about the archetypical stories. You know, Jordan Peterson actually talks about this a lot. But when I was just reading the book, it just completely went over me. I just went, I can't resonate with this. I don't really understand what's going on here. But there's obviously something in here because you know, so many other people resonated with it. And
that's exactly it. I think that's literally hitting on the head. I was able to read the book, but there was parts that I would understand, but then there were also so many elements that were, I guess, a little bit, they sort of just felt like they went over my head a little bit. Not for lack of trying, obviously, but it just, I don't know, I couldn't use my own sort of interpretation and experience to sort of understand it to a degree. And perhaps now if I read it again, I'd be able to get a better understanding. But at the time, I just wasn't able to truly grasp, I guess, the sort of inner workings of the book. But what about yourself?
Yeah. I read the book in, I think around the same period you said, around 2017. It was when I was traveling that I read it. And for me to be honest, it was just a rehash because earlier that year I had basically listened to every single thing he'd put on YouTube. I went on a Jordan Peterson binge. It was just like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, just bam, 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 bam.
4 months locked in a room.
Exactly. And so most of the stuff in that, it didn't hit me as much as, you know, all of his other stuff, because I'd listen to like 100 hours of him talking or something like that. So it didn't hit me that hard, but I would say listening to him in general, it helped me out with a period where I was feeling a little bit nihilistic. So in the sense that you know, someone I really care for in my family was having family problem, like health issues, and I was sort of trying to make sense of the world, saying like how can the world just be so you know, capricious? Like it just like this shouldn't happen. And it was making me
good things happening to good people. Bad things happening to good people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think whatever it was in his works, what he was talking about, really just struck me as saying like, okay, you know, I can't really point to one thing and say, you know, this made sense, but it was sort of just the accumulation. It
allowed you to sort of, or provided a perspective to go, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
So do you find, I guess perhaps maybe the reason why I didn't grasp as much from Jordan Peterson's book is, I think if I would sort of draw a difference between, like, I guess a theoretical approach to understanding psychology versus a practical approach with regard to, I guess, as you say, reading that book and understanding that perspective to be able to go, okay, sort of this is my take on it, versus, I guess, a more practical approach with regard to the understanding of mindset through endurance exercise. I think that's the main difference. Like, my understanding of psychology has stemmed more from, I guess, the practical application of, or the pursuit of, rather than, I guess, a deep sort of theoretical understanding, perhaps, which might explain why when reading his book, I just wasn't able to sort of look at it or understand his perspective with regard to my own sort of outlook.
That could definitely be it, as well as I think he fleshes out things a lot more when he's actually speaking. So he will provide the real life examples of, you know, from his psychological, when he was in he was treating patients and things like that. He's got examples of that, and he's got examples from his real life. And that book definitely felt like, I'm going to take 20 years worth of my knowledge and just cram it into this one thing. You're going to get like the bare bones, the best of it. But you know, there's dangers to doing that as well, which is you can just pass over your head a really important concept, which is he wrote in 2 lines, but that might need actually
further sort of extrapolation.
Exactly.
And I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, I guess for me personally, I've always been a very, I guess, practical sort of hands-on learner. So I guess even at school, I spoke briefly, like with English, I was never really all that good at it. I just couldn't get my brain to sort of lock in on reading and writing, and only just passed through grade 11 and 12. But I guess following on from that, my capacity to sort of read and understand it was just never truly there. And then learning by someone sort of showing and discussing and talking to me about something as it's happening, I found is so much more effective, I guess, for my brain. Again, so I guess coming back to why I guess endurance exercise is so good is because it's literally such a practical thing. Like you have to, I guess your back goes up against the wall. So like with the nihilism and feeling that sort of, I guess, mentally, like a lot of turmoil for the situation, you sort of have to think your way through that and try and find the avenue to go, why am I thinking like this? What is the reason for that? And through reading the book, you're capable of sort of getting that understanding versus then when you're going for a run, as we was talking about before, and things start to go shit, your shins hurt or your foot hurts or something goes wrong, and having to sort of practically sort of find an avenue to navigate that and sidestep it. I think it's sort of two different avenues of psychology that are still obviously interlinked entirely, but then it's like the process of mentally working through in, I guess, a theoretical sense versus then mentally working through in a practical sort of sense.
There's only so much that you can learn and then not apply. So Juan and I talk about this lots, which is you can look at as many books as you want about running or how to do push-ups or calisthenics, but there's at some point, and it should be really rapidly early on, where it's like, okay, no, you need to actually go feel what this likes to do a push-up, and then go, oh, okay, now there's just so much knowledge contained within the doing of something rather than just the actual learning of it. And for me personally, I think that's been one of the biggest changes I've seen in myself compared to a teenager, which is I still do like to spend a lot of time researching stuff, but I'm much more quick to go out and try something. Like a lived experience. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think maybe again, sort of like that's perhaps why with, I guess, Jordan Peterson, I mean, how old are you? I'm 28. Yeah, 28. So even 26, so not too much younger, but I guess the lived experiences that I've had, maybe there wasn't enough of a reference point to sort of be able to provide a personal understanding of to then, I guess, reference from. But then, with like a lived experience or like with actually going out and trying something and figuring it out as you go, or then perhaps using a tool as you're figuring something out to then sort of help further that understanding is, I guess, so much more, achievable perhaps, depending on the situation. So nice, man. Nice. Yeah. It was really fun, man. I think we'll call it here for the moment. So you actually do PT work as a job as well. So if anyone's in the Brisbane area want to learn more about running, how to get to 110 kg, what's the best place to reach out to you? So James Penny Fit on Instagram, and then also James Penny Fit on Facebook. So I can be found there. It's got links and phone numbers and stuff. Perfect. So, those will be in the show notes. So if you're listening wherever you are, hit me up. Let me know. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, man. No worries. It's been fun. Has been.